What's happening, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Comic Book Weekly. This is season 5. We took a week off because Kat had her birthday last week.
I
So we
did.
just felt like, you know what? We shouldn't do the show because it's Kat's birthday. And Kat and I were talking off the air, and she wound up going to Atlantic City, went to Chef Gordon Ramsay's restaurant, and she played top golf. So it sounded like she had a really good time.
It's almost like I was turning 30, but I'm only turning 29. I have one more year. No, I had a very good day. I missed you guys, missed the show, but I was like, I'll be back next week. I should, maybe not work on my birthday. I took the whole day off too. I played basketball. It was such a nice day.
Nice. I was gonna say all your friends need to step it up next year then.
They do, but honestly, like they did too much. Like they celebrated so well. I don't know how they're gonna step it up, but we all have our 30th birthday for the most part. So I have a feeling it might be a joint, like we go somewhere type thing.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think we already have plans for that. Maybe we'll go to Vegas. Who knows?
Oh yeah, man, that's a place to go. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, but yes, thank you guys for all the happy birthdays, and we are back. And last week, actually, I don't think there was any huge books anyway, so I don't think we missed out on that. Like, if we missed out this week, there was a lot of big books. You have Transformers and G.O.D.S and all that.
There was books, but there wasn't like a ton of books. I think like I only had like, I don't know. I think I only had like 13 books altogether last week.
I think like the big ones we missed out were like Flash. And I think that was probably the biggest one, right? So,
yeah, I'm looking right now. It's Flash, Ultimate Invasion came out. I got a lot of books. I had 15, but they're all like I said, they weren't huge books. There was a lot of smaller books. But maybe we'll talk about Flash and Ultimate Invasion if we have time later in the show. But we are going to talk about news first. So let's get into that. There's not a ton of it because next week is New York Comic Con. And before anyone asks, I usually do go to New York Comic Con. But my business partner, Phil, he is going to a wedding out of town. So I decided, I went to San Diego, I did all my stuff there. I'm actually taking the year off. So we're going to go bigger and better. We'll probably like table next year in some shape or form. We tabled last year. We were in Artist Alley last year. So I was like, you know what? It's always around my birthday, as we were just talking. I never kind of get that time to just like have to myself. So I'm not doing New York Comic Con this year, but we will talk about New York Comic Con, I'm sure, on the show because there'll be.
We'll talk about all the news that comes out of it. That's for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, let's talk about. Well, first of all, Wonder Woman's daughter is getting her own book, which I don't think is super surprising. But I hate when books are announced that you don't even know the character. You don't know if it's going to be popular. It's kind of like the Spider-Boy effect where it's like, okay, well, who knows if we're going to like her, but I guess she'll get her own book. Trying to see who's writing it, if it's Tom King or not. But yeah, Tom King's writing it too. So
when is the book coming out? I don't even.
January. It looks like it's a special. I don't think it's an ongoing.
Wow.
So maybe it's just a one shot, unless it's spinning into something.
Wasn't she only in one book anyway?
And I feel like it was a free comic book.
I didn't even know this was a thing.
I just don't even remember.
What happened, Brant?
I didn't even know this was a thing.
It is a thing. They are. Also, Tevye says, what about the Connor Kent news? I don't even know what Connor Kent news there is.
Yeah, I was trying to find that. I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm not sure.
Oh, I see something on Bleeding Cool.
Well, if it's on Bleeding Cool, it might be a rumor. We try to only talk about things that are actually concretely announced. So if it's only a rumor, unless it's announced later on, we will not be talking about news that hasn't been announced.
I think it was just a pitch, so that was mentioned on social media, so it's not anything official yet. I don't think.
So we'll say. Anyway. GT Key Comics asks, do you think that the announcement will add spec to Wonder Woman's first appearance of Trinity? I don't think so, in my opinion. I don't have any more reasoning besides that, but I think the character has to be popular for people to care.
Yeah, she's got to be written well for her to have those, to have those legs. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's the thing. Like it's just like Spider-Gwen took off because she was a different type of character, and yet she took off. Like she was written well enough to where she lasted, and she's got her own movie and everything else. So that character, like people love that character. you know, just like Miles Morales, like he shows up and he was more like organically created, you know what I'm saying? And it's just like, and he took off, like people like the character, you know. I just feel like the daughter of Wonder Woman is just, I don't know, it's kind of lame in my opinion. So
I like the first issues. I'm having hope that maybe this character will be interesting, but I wasn't impressed when we originally saw her. We do have a super chat. Angel gave $5, so thank you very much.
thank you, Angel.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Any other thoughts on Wonder Woman's daughter? We'll move on.
Not really.
All right. Next up is that Greg Pak is doing a Lilo and Stitch book. I know there's a couple Disney books announced from Dynamite, but I thought this one was interesting just because obviously this is a very big writer and he does a lot with like Asian culture and those type of stories. So I was like, oh, that's cool. I hope it's fun. I hope it's not just like lost episodes. I hope it does something to the mythology of Lilo and Stitch because I had a TV show. So I thought that was cool. This is the only one that's exciting me because a lot of the Dynamite ones are all just like villains. You know, they're all like Maleficent. Cruella, I think, is getting a book. They just have an interest. I mean, Gargoyles I couldn't get into. I know people have been enjoying that, but this one looked cool.
Scar one.
Scar, yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna get this, but not for myself. My Lisa and her sister are huge Lilo and Stitch fans. They're huge Disney fans. So I've been getting Lisa the Hades one as well because she likes that movie Hercules. So I'm definitely going to get Lilo and Stitch, but I'll at least read it because it's Greg Pak. But
sure,
I'll get it too because my wife loves Stitch.
Yeah.
So I'll probably get it for her. Like she don't read comics at all, but she might read this just because of that character.
Right.
I hope it's good for that sake.
Yeah, my sister-in-law has like a bunch of Stitch art all over her walls and stuff. She has for years. So, and she's not a comic fan either. So, but she might read this. I don't know.
No, I feel like again this could be a good opportunity for people that don't read comics to get into comics. So I hope it's again not just there and it actually is a story. All right, let's get into Godzilla and Kong graphic novel on its way. So it's a crossover that I feel like we definitely have seen before. Actually, we know because there was a movie. So.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I get when it comes to Godzilla and Kong or whatever it is, these things are always timeless. So there's never, I don't think there's anything wrong with releasing graphic novels of these big gargantuan creatures. I mean, I think it's kind of cool. And if you release them in graphic novel form, comic form, movie form, it's fine. It's totally fine.
Brandon, any thoughts on those or move on to the next one?
No thoughts.
No thoughts on Godzilla and Kong. No. But you do have thoughts on Dick Tracy returning to comic books through Mad Cave in March.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to comment on here is that article said that they were going to update it to be more current, which I think is cool. Usually when we see Dick Tracy come back, it's set in that time period and everything, which is fine. But I've never seen like a reimagining of Dick Tracy. Yes. And I think that's a pretty cool idea. So I want to see what they do with it.
And Alex Segura is writing it. He is the king of noir. So that might just give me to want to read it just because of him.
That could be, that definitely could be something super cool. I'll be on board with that. At least try that first issue to see what route they do go with it.
Yeah. So believe it or not, we're at the last piece of news here, which is the Giant Size is returning in 2024 for 50 years. And that also includes Giant Size Spider-Man.
My concern is the Giant Size price. Like, what are they going to charge for those books? You know, Giant Size is always a story that, you know, would tell the Marvel universe. They're actually, you know, oversized books. You know, worth your money. And I'm curious here, like, how is this going to be delivered? I think when I read through the article, part of it's going to be like a facsimile and things like that. So I don't know. I'm going to see I guess I'll go on a month by month basis to see what these things have to offer. I think it's kind of cool that they bring back, this stuff, this, reimagining of Giant Size, as long as it's just not like reprint after reprint, maybe some original stories, and that they don't overcharge for these books, right? I don't want to see a Giant Size comic book for $10 because I feel like they're creating it just so they can charge more money with the higher page count.
Yeah, or again, it has a story of some sort that's going somewhere. I think is always nice. That was the point of those Giant Sizes back in the day,
Yeah.
is that they moved the story a bit. They were like anthologies. It's when and Brent is going to be back. He's just restarting his computer. But yeah, they were like second anthology. So if you had an anthology that year, they're like, okay, we already did that anthology. Let's do the Giant Size to kind of tell a story. Now we get an annual every month, it feels like.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's just you get at least, I would say, at least like twice a year you get annuals, for when it comes to your regular ongoing series. At least it seems like that anyway.
No, I very much agree. We also got a comment from Mark who wanted to recommend some indie books that are coming out tomorrow. So I wanted to pull that up. Midlife in Nights by Image, which we're actually going to talk about that later because that's some of our most anticipated books. Army of Darkness Forever, and then Operation Sunshine. Haven't heard of Operation Sunshine. That's a new one to me. Let's see. We also have the bronze page said, "Hey, Mike, Kat, and Brant. Mike, I liked your Worthy video this week, and Kat with your top comics video. Thank you. Glad you watched both of
Appreciate
them."
that. Yeah.
And then people wishing happy birthday. Thank you very much, guys. As we wait for Brant, maybe we could talk about the Flash issue 1 and Ultimate Invasion, just as we kind of gear into the new comics. We talk about the big comics from last week. Ultimate Invasion, I'm a little worried about Ultimate Comics for me personally, because I didn't like Ultimate Invasion at all. There wasn't anything. I said this in my review. What I liked about Ultimate Comics, and obviously Brian Michael Bendis's writing, was it was so character driven. It was about these characters that start in the place of Spider-Man just being a teen again and what that looks like in modern comics, and then it expanded the world because obviously things change in a modern lens. Like you become
Right.
a different character. And the Ultimate Invasion, I feel like, focused so much on the nitty gritty of like, this is how this universe did this, this, and that. I'm a little worried about what the future of the Ultimate Universe looks like with that.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think it needs to develop. It's gonna kick off with, there's a one shot and then there's Ultimate Spider-Man. And so it's gonna take time. I thought the 4-issue event was kind of interesting. I thought it was kind of cool, like how everything went like full circle when you think about it, because Stark was like Iron Lad in that universe, but yet he was Kang, and that's kind of like the same thing that happens in the main universe in the long run. So
Sure.
I did find that interesting. But to get to that point, it was just very slow. And for like the page count and the money spent, I don't know if it was really worth it, and if it really I don't know if it really delivered the punch that I was looking for. There was a lot of talking heads, a lot of standing around, and I did enjoy it, but I wanted something more from it.
Yeah, and we've been waiting over 10 years for it. I agree. Like, there's been so much anticipation. I don't think it met it. And it's gonna be interesting because we're gonna talk about Transformers in a bit. That had like a lot of anticipation and hype, and did it meet it? And obviously didn't have to wait as long. But I think that'll be interesting to talk about. But the other thing was Flash, so that came out last week. And that was a weird book because in all other circumstances, I thought it was fine. I thought it was fun. Like, Wally's a cool character, and it was interesting to see another genre being tackled, which is horror. You don't really get to see it very often with Flash, and it's definitely a very in the shadows type comic, with especially the villain. But then when you compare it to the previous run, it's like, oh, but I want that more than whatever this was.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's so night and day compared to what we had, right? So when I did my review on it, when I talked about it on Worthy Ones, it was one of those things where I was like, I don't dislike it. I was like, it did have its fun moments in it, but it's not the same because you do have Deodato's artwork in there, and his artwork is very dark, you know. But I do see where he's going with other elements of the story, as it's going to be this darker story. And same with like Linda Park. It just seems like she's going to go through a postpartum depression and whatnot, which might be interesting to tackle. My thing with the comic is just give it time. It's got to like percolate a little bit. I feel like
Sure. Yeah.
he threw a lot at you at that one issue, because there's so many characters to juggle. So just don't write it off at the first issue. Give it some time. And also, when it comes to Deodato Jr.'s artwork, if you're not a fan or not used to it, you got to give it time also as well. It didn't bother me per se because I like his artwork. I know what to expect.
I think it worked for this book, because I don't like his artwork
Yes,
usually,
yes, we
I
know
think
that. Yeah.
for this book it made sense because it's a horror book. So most of the time I don't like his art when it's in a main event, and that happened a lot. Like Original Sin, it happened.
Yeah.
He always did a lot of Marvel main events where I'm like, this doesn't work here. It's not a horror book. So Brent, we're talking about Flash issue 1, and we talked about Ultimate Invasion. Just to kind of talk about it, but what are your opinions on both of those?
Well, with Flash, yeah, I feel the same way. I think it's I thought it was a fine start, but I think it is going to take some time to kind of really fill out the story and the vibe for it. But as far as the art goes, I didn't have a problem with it. The only thing I didn't love was the layouts, because I feel like with a Flash book, you need movement. And I feel like all the way that the grid layouts were with the panels and everything, it felt like it stilted it a little bit for me. So it slowed things way down. But we'll see how it goes. I
Right.
thought it was a pretty decent issue though.
My
Ultimate Invasion. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry.
No.
My thing with Flash real quick, when it came to the panel layout as well, was there was so much dialogue as well, because there was a heavy explanation of like the Speed Force and how it works and everything that's going on with all those panels, right? And with all those words in that, but it felt very cluttered.
I definitely agree with that for sure. So also Ultimate Invasion, Brent.
I'm trying to remember.
Or even overall thoughts on the book as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, it was okay. Right.
We're talking about maybe this might jog your memory. We're talking about how Stark winds up becoming Iron Lad, who winds up becoming Kang in the end. So it's kind of like, it's almost like in the main universe situation where Iron Lad is Kang, and he winds up meeting himself basically at the end of the book.
Yeah, that's why it was just okay. The whole thing,
Yeah.
I was hoping it was going to have a stronger finish than that, and that, I stuck with it. I enjoyed it overall. I thought it was fine, but I didn't feel like the payoff was huge enough to kick off a whole universe for me. But
time will tell there too.
Yeah, exactly, right.
So before we get into this week's comics, I do have a Kickstarter, so I'm gonna go screen share that first. Let me pull it up, and this is actually the last 2 days. So if you want to check out the dancer, I'm gonna pull it up here. She is a dancer / assassin. When she was little, she witnessed her parents being murdered in front of her and never dealt with that trauma until now. We have a Batman, the anime series homage, a Bruce Lee homage, and it's the full series. So if you want the full 1 through 4, this is a great place to do it because it's over after this. And there's no spin-offs, there's no sequels. So just check out a beginning, middle, and end story over there. So hopefully you guys could go check that one out. And I think now we're gonna dive into the big topic, actually.
Yeah. Actually, I just wanted to say real quick, I'm having my garage sale this Saturday. So for whatever, if anybody that's out there watching this show, now or after the fact, if you want to stop by my garage sale, you're more than welcome to do it. Email is always in the description box below, and I'll give you the details of it. My house is a freaking disaster right now. Not only is it comic books, but it's just like everything. We're going through everything in the house. So it's like going to be this huge garage sale. And there's just shit laying all over the house. There's comics all over the house. There's short boxes, long boxes. I'm almost done with the boxes. I've gone through probably about 60 comic book boxes of stuff. And I want to say I probably have, see, I got 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10. Probably have about 13 boxes that I'm selling. So
wow,
it's been hard. I don't know how these sellers do it, like going through collections and pricing all this stuff.
I
And
think because it's probably their only job at that
yeah, but
point,
it's just so monotonous. It's like, oh my God. And putting everything in order and just, oh, it's so hard, man. It's so hard.
Yeah.
But if you stop by, welcome. Hopefully I got some good prices for you. And it's going to be a lot of fun, so it's going to pay off at the end.
It will be worth it for sure.
Yeah. All right. So now we're going to go into comics, which is our topic. And the first thing we're going to talk about was the highly anticipated, long awaited Transformers issue 1. And one of the big things about this book is like, is it for everybody? So for Transformers fans like Brant and myself that grew up to these properties, we know these characters, we know their personalities, and we've had some good books and we've had some poor books over the years, right? And as fans, we're definitely hoping for a comic here that's going to deliver to the way these characters are, right? And so, as for a fan, me personally, don't know about Brant yet, but I absolutely love this book. I thought it was perfectly executed, and after reading this and actually watching a video that I shared on the group with Daniel Warren Johnson's director cut on this, and his passion and love for the art of comics and the Transformers himself, like the dude's my new favorite like creator, because it was so awesome him describing him create this comic book, and I loved everything about it. And it was really, really good in my opinion. Probably one of my favorite books of the year.
I want to hear Brant's opinion first because
No,
you want to hear my opinion first?
Yeah, I want to hear yours
Okay.
because you're coming in as the
as a new person.
Exactly. Yeah.
I thought it was really solid. It was a 4-star book for me. I don't know if I could give it like a do a power bomb just yet. That doesn't mean it won't reach that. Do a power bomb for me. What I loved about it is that you really didn't need to be a wrestling fan at all, just because I feel like it was so character driven. I think in the beginning of this issue, it is very character driven and it's very like you don't need no Transformers. The middle, on the other hand, I'm like, I don't know who any of these robots are. But what I liked about it is that it's obvious that they're going to explain who these characters are because you're in the POV of these new characters who also don't know who these robots are. So I'm excited for the second and third issue and what's to come because I'm excited to be in the shoes of that main character. And I think that's what was kind of brilliant about this first issue is that obviously you guys would enjoy it because it's Transformers and it's well written and it feels like a good book. But as someone who doesn't know anything about Transformers, I feel like, okay, I'm not jumping into something that feels like has 20 years of information. It feels like it will be explained to me. Was it exactly explained in this first issue? No, but I don't think that was a bad thing. I think it was on purpose. But I liked it. I thought it was really solid. Again, didn't hit the height of Do a Power Bomb, but that doesn't mean it won't. And I'm excited for issue 2.
Yeah, I don't think it's quite a do a power bomb yet, but like you said, I think it has that potential. You can see all the inner workings of that kind of story developing, especially with Spike and his dad. But what I loved about it was that I did feel like you could come into this fairly new to it with just a basis knowledge of Transformers. I think you got enough to understand, okay, they've crash landed here. They're at war with each other, and you got to figure out why they're on Earth now. And that's been like the origin story of Transformers every time is that, and that's the knowledge you always start with. So, and I think it was done in a way here that kind of illustrated right from the jump that there's that all these Transformers were at one point on the same side. I think you could kind of see that with them being confused why Starscream is like attacking everybody. And I thought that was a cool way to do that, to reintroduce the origin without just like giving us an info dump. Yeah, exactly. Which is something that every Transformer thing I've ever seen, read, or enjoyed has done. You know, it's given me this huge info dump, and I didn't feel like we needed that here. At the same time, you mentioned do a power bomb. There was a little wrestling nod because Optimus Prime did a German suplex on Starscream for all my wrestling fellows out there, which I thought was kind of cool. But and you know, the one thing I was concerned about was if his art style was going to fit a book with all these angles and stuff.
Definitely,
and I love that and I love the way that he actually talked about that in the back. I don't know if either of you read it, but he talked about like his story of drawing Transformers when he was younger and everything, and never getting the angles right and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I thought that was fun because I did the same thing in school. I was like, I got in trouble and got my papers taken away from me many times for drawing Transformers during class. But I thought that was cool. But I did feel like the art style was fluid and angular at the same time, which is really hard to pull off. There was a lot of movement, but you still got the understanding these are robotic figures. They are, you know, made of metal and everything and stuff. So yeah, I thought it was a fantastic first issue. It gave me so much as a longtime fan to attach to, and at the same time, it gave me something fresh and new, a new take on Spike and his dad, a side of the relationship we've never seen before.
I thought that was a new character. Didn't even know that was a character from Transformers. I thought those humans were not.
Carly is a character in the Transformers also, believe it or not.
Interesting.
Oh, really?
Yeah. She was a girlfriend that was introduced later in the cartoon.
Okay.
Gotcha. What was so good about this, though, after I watched Daniel Warren Johnson's like video on him creating this book, is just like you talk about those angulars, like how he was drawing those panels, Brant, and he would explain panel by panel like what his thought process were, how he wanted to show Optimus Prime, and just all those things. And it was so cool. And a lot of his inspiration for his art, just in general, especially for this Transformers book, is manga inspired. He shows the books that he actually used, you know, to get inspiration from, which I thought was very interesting as well. This book touched on a lot of things. Obviously, if you're a big Transformer fan, you obviously know everything that goes on here. But you said it right, Brant, when it came to not over explaining things, and a lot of stuff was done just in the drawings itself. But it was just simplistic enough to understand, listen, these guys were not at war because Jetfire comes in to save his comrades. And all of a sudden, he finds out that Starscream is blowing up other people, you know? So right away, it's just like, oh my gosh, like what the hell is going on here? And yeah, there is the emotional attachment to human characters, but you got to remember, Transformers, the more you read this, they're going to get an emotional attachment to you as well, because all Transformers are emotional. You know, they're like humans, but they're just robots. So when Jetfire wound up getting killed at the end of that issue, they're kind of like, shit, they killed off Jetfire. Like, he's the guy that went to go rescue all the Transformers, and he winds up getting killed in the process. And just with Ratchet obviously relaying that information to Prime, saying he's not going to make it, you're just like, oh, dude, that sucks, you know? So right away, there's that emotional attachment. And then there's that hatred for Starscream right from the start, because it's something that you've never seen in Transformers in a comic or a cartoon, where you take a human life and he squishes it with his hand. Like, he destroys the human. And it shows like how evil and how much of a dickhead he really is. The other thing that's really good about this comic is that it doesn't overwhelm you it doesn't overwhelm you with a lot of characters. It gives you a
I agree.
few basic characters, so you get to learn the ones that are in the book right now. And I was afraid that they were going to overload you with that, right?
And there wasn't a lot of mythology in it either, which helps because
No.
a lot of these type of books are like, oh, here's 10,000 billion things you need to know about Transformers. And it's not that. It really is like almost an episode one of a show. And honestly, I think Power Rangers does a pretty good job at that
Yeah,
as well.
I agree.
Yeah, and I think it kind of
And
shares that in this because I'm sure the mythology will build, you know.
yeah, and I think that's the trap that Transformers books in particular fall into all the time. And it was mine and Mike's main criticism was like so many characters, so much s- kind of
Like black
backstory that you have to be
history.
filled into. Yeah,
Yeah.
history and all that you have to be filled into, and you have to like keep track of 30, 40 characters at all times, and it's just impossible as a reader. I think at least it's just as this reader, it's impossible for me to kind
Maybe
of
if you're only
navigate
reading
all that.
Transformers, then you'd be able
Maybe,
to. But
yeah,
So I
yeah.
got a couple tidbits here watching that video.
Mhm.
Number one, Bumblebee is not going to be in the series. So even though he got blown up, it's like he's
Wow,
basically messed up like really, really bad right now. So,
that's crazy.
and the main reason was one, Daniel Warren Johnson is tired of Bumblebee being in every single
He has been in
Transformers
every single
property,
thing. Yeah.
right? And Hasbro even told him that, can we get away from Bumblebee for a while? So he was like, well, that's good because I wasn't going to put him in there anyway.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
and then there was just some interesting things there. Another one, it was Robert Kirkman's idea to actually put Jetfire in Void Rivals. And the reason why he
Uh,
picked Jetfire was because it's his favorite Autobot.
okay.
So it's very
That's
interesting.
cool.
Yeah, very,
Yeah.
very interesting.
For Kat, who probably has never read an IDW Transformers book,
no.
there for a while, Bumblebee was the leader of the Autobots.
That I
So
figured though, because
yeah,
I only really know honestly Bumblebee's name. I don't know who Starscream is. I don't know Jetstream. I don't know any of these
yeah.
people.
Starscream is you know who Megatron is, right?
Yeah,
Like the
Megatron,
okay,
Optimus Prime, and Bumblebee
okay.
are probably the only three.
So Starscream was always Megatron's number two
Okay.
throughout the history of, so that's why like when they were starting to mention his name, he's like, don't say his name, he always was jealous of Megatron, always trying to undermine
One
him,
of
trying
them.
to
Yeah.
take over, yeah, that kind of thing. So
And it's hinted in this comic too, because his name was about mentioned and he was just
yeah,
like, don't mention his name. So like Megatron doesn't even show up in this issue. So that's what's cool. And he wasn't even in the ship, as
right,
far as we know. So
right.
I am so curious where he's at too. But yeah, the action was really good in this comic. Like we said, you talked about this, the suplex, and he also did like the arm bar, the clothes bar in there
Clothesline,
as
yeah.
well too. Yeah, I thought that was kind of cool, but I thought it was really well done, man. And for a first issue, I felt like it delivered, and it shows like he cares. The cool part was the kids pushing the gun towards Optimus Prime. And the one thing that Daniel Warren Johnson said, he's like, you can't get a lot of expression out of Optimus's face because he's just covered up and he's got
Yeah,
his eyes. So he wanted to really express that through Spike when he was pushing that gun over to him. So
that's
that was
cool.
quite
Yeah.
interesting too. I did like the nod to I don't know if you guys read Murder Falcon, but Carly
Nah.
had that van, right? And
Mm-hmm.
Murder Falcon drove a van as well, like that
That's
had
fun.
Oh,
all that
nice.
graffiti all over it too. So he
Yeah,
puts little nods from past projects that he did.
yeah, that's
So
cool.
really good stuff there. But
It's interesting. He's a kind of newer creator too. It's kind of crazy like how big he's become with honestly mostly just indie books, which I think is very
yeah,
interesting that
Yeah,
he did that Wonder Woman book and he did the Beta Ray
Beta
Bill
Ray
book,
Bill.
but
Yeah,
that's
hmm
it. he made
Yeah.
a name for himself just doing his own stuff, which I think, and obviously Transformers now is a property, but I still think it's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good stuff, man. I got my fingers crossed for this book going forward. I can't wait to see where it goes. It's going to be a lot of fun, I think. And I think we might get the book that we actually really want, you know? So it's good. All right. So I'm glad you enjoyed it, Kat. I was worried that you weren't going to enjoy it, but I think
especially
it was
with the title I suggested.
You know,
you're right. Yeah, I was
it's just written in a way where I think it is new reader friendly and it doesn't overwhelm you. And as long as he can continue to do that, I think people will continue to read it. And I think the readership could actually grow on it.
And it's interesting because I don't want to say I was pleasantly surprised that I liked it. I think if I didn't redo a power bomb, I'd be like, I don't want to give this a chance. Who cares? But because I read that and knowing his style already, it really helped for me to understand and enjoy this because I kind of, his writing is very similar in each series. Like you kind of, I don't want to say know where it's going, but you know the style he's going for. It's like it's heart. You're gonna get a cliffhanger somewhere. There's gonna be bombastic fights. Like he does the same thing in every comic, in obviously a different way. So it's like I knew what to expect, and I think that's why also it was easier to kind of jump into it. If I just jumped into Transformers, didn't know who this creator was, I might have not liked it as much because I don't know if I would have like had as much of an open mind because I don't know anything about Transformers.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's good that we have it's very good that we have a writer that's very passionate at what he does, you know, and an artist and he's a newer creator. And that's what we need in this industry. And we need comics to for people to get excited about. So I feel like, again, we talked about it before, you know, with Transformers, G.I. Joe, this stuff, it gets people talking, you know, and gets people excited. And if it delivers, then people will continue to read it. You know?
And this sold really well. It sold like, I want to say close to 200,000 copies.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Kind of crazy.
And it went to, and now it's getting second printing. Yeah. So, and I bought my freaking variant copies. I went crazy on that shit.
I only got 3, I think.
Did you? I got as many as my store had. And I wound up getting, I don't normally do this, but I wound up getting the 1 in 50. And I wound up getting that one, that one is pricey. And then I wound up getting the Void Rivals one from the week before, which is the spoiler variant. So I wound up getting those 2. But yeah, I went crazy on all of them. So,
well, rightfully so.
You're excited. I would have, but I couldn't.
I just didn't buy that many comics.
Week.
I bought very
few. Week. Yeah, it was a small week this week.
It was. But where I pre-ordered the covers, you know, so I had to be a little choosy 2 months ago.
Yeah, you didn't know what the week was going to look like.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on. Let's move on to G.O.D.S. I didn't dislike this book. I didn't. I actually liked it. Because I didn't read it with anything else. I read it. I knew what to expect. It's Jonathan Hickman. It's going to be long. And let's just read this only and take like a couple hours rest before you read anything else. And that's exactly what I did. And it felt kind of like an indie book because there's characters really that I didn't know of. I felt like in this comic book. I just don't know where we're going to go with this at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying?
Before we get into G.O.D.S, real quick, I do want to answer. I guess it's more of a comment, but Alien Ninja says, "I think Transformers was good enough to get people interested in Void Rivals." That's so interesting because I read issue 1 of Void Rivals and I did not like it. I could not get into it because I didn't know anything about Transformers. I didn't know anything about these properties. But this, I was like, and I'm gonna pick up G.I. Joe because I love Joshua Williamson. But I think it's almost like the reverse effect because I've read Void Rivals and that
if you had read this. If you had read this first, would you be more inclined to give Void Rivals a try, though?
Maybe, but I don't think I would like it still. I think if I still did the reverse, I would read it and then be like, oh, I don't like it. I'll stick to Transformers, you know? I don't think it changed my likeness towards it.
Gotcha.
Maybe it would have filled
I like Void Rivals, so...
I like Void Rivals, not because of the Transformers that are in it, I thought it was kind of neat how they integrated the two books together. I thought that was kind of good. And now it makes sense that Robert Kirkman, it was his idea to instill Jetfire in there to go to the Autobot spaceship to, retrieve them all. I thought that was, brilliantly done to tie everything in together. But it just connects that universe. But the Transformers don't make or break Void Rivals for me.
I don't remember much about the first issue of what I disliked about it. I remember thinking, oh, this isn't for me, but there was something that felt a little disconnected to me compared to this that I felt more connected to. Going to G.O.D.S, speaking of writing I usually don't like. It's interesting because I think this book is necessary, right? We've always talked about it. Marvel needs to do something different. It doesn't have to be attached to 10 billion things. It feels attached enough to Marvel, but it's its own little reality. Almost feels like Inhuman like, where Inhumans don't really interact with everybody. It feels very much like that. But I didn't care about any of it because I don't connect to Hickman's writing. There's nothing that I personally like about this book, but I think it was a good book, and I think all of us in the comic community have to be more willing to understand that, where it's like, okay, this book might not be for me, but that doesn't mean it's not a good book, and that's kind of where I lie with this. The negative, and what our topic would have been if Transformers didn't come out, is how much of a price tag, a $10 price tag for honestly a relatively smaller book. It's not that big. It's probably 40 something pages if I had to guess.
60. It's 64. Yeah.
It feels so these
I
Marvel
remember
books. This looks like 64.
I remember the solicits. It's 60 something pages.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better. But I mean,
there's no graphs. There's no graphs.
There's no graphs, but you have pages like this.
No. Yeah, but that's like not compared to what he usually does. And if you look at the dialogue in that story, there's a lot of dialogue in that story. Yeah, exactly. There is a lot in that book. I mean, it was an okay story. I thought it was interesting. You got this guy that comes out. He's got the Living Tribunal staff, and he's opening up this abyss. And I was like, whoa, how did this dude get the Living Tribunal staff? Like, that's just not something you acquire very easily, So I was very intrigued by that. I thought they handled it quite easily, though. And then I do like how, you read the end of the book at the beginning of the book. That's very, Hickman-like. Reminded me of a movie. But then when I got done reading the issue, I'm like, okay, where do we go next? And then I'm like, so is the next story completely different? Like, I'm kind of lost where we go from here now.
No, it seemed like it was the same characters.
Yeah, same characters.
Well, it says the Centum normally has 25 primes, but not only 3 remain. College isn't worth the time or the money. So there's a college thing.
And then it mentions the villain from this story. It said also that dude's from Georgia, but that doesn't matter. I don't know what that was about. It was very mysterious and vague on purpose, I think. I kind of feel like you did, Kat. Like, I don't necessarily care about these characters, except I did like the main character, Rye or whatever his name was.
The romance was interesting between him and his wife, I guess.
Yeah, the romance was interesting. I'm curious to see who his god is, what god he serves, like who's he the avatar of exactly. So I'm there's some curiosity there, but at the same time, and I thought it was a solid story. I enjoyed the read, but I really didn't care about anything that was going on, so I don't know how I'm going to feel going forward.
Well, I'm right there with you guys. Yeah, like I enjoyed this. I thought it was a great. I wouldn't say great, but it was a good story.
It was a good story, yeah.
But it's just this kind of like
as well.
But why do I care about that guy and this girl? And am I going to care about them 2 issues from now? So I don't know. It is what it is.
It's hard with a Hickman book because sometimes these threads get dropped for a year.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. So you never know.
It has nothing with them being new characters, because again, I could reference Transformers where I didn't know they were characters from Transformers, but they felt like new characters to me. I was like, oh, that's really easy to get into because this guy is dealing with his relationship with his father, and it seems like something's happened there and someone died. I was like, oh, that's something I could easily relate to. This is like I don't even the grounding element of the romance, which I think was probably the most grounded element of the story. I didn't care. There wasn't anything to really, because that's what's hard about Marvel and DC, because there's always like, oh, why don't you have new characters? And when new characters show up, they're not good enough. They have to be connected to Wonder Woman or whatever. And I don't want to dog on something that's just like, oh, they're new characters, so we won't care. But there's a way to write new characters, and I think indie comics, they tend to have to do it a little bit better, because like you have to hook the audience. They don't know who these people are. It's like, well, you have to have a great, I almost call it a pilot. Like when you watch a television show, you have to have a great pilot if you want to sell the rest of your show. You want people to stay after the commercial, especially if you're talking about regular television, cable, and stuff like that. So with a comic, sometimes you have the Marvel and DC to back you up, and you feel like you don't need to expand and tell a kind of pilot type of issue one. And I think that's kind of the detriment of this book, is that it does kind of rely a little bit too much on the Marvel side of things, or maybe it's just Hickman. We've read some of his indie stuff too, and they kind of do the same thing.
I mean, this book and Transformers are like you said, completely opposites though. Like we were talking about it before, tons of dialogue to explain what's going on. How much dialogue did you get in this story just when they were sitting at a bar, conversation with each other about, why they should break up and why they can't be together because of, the people that they serve, right? And where in Transformers, we have gigantic robots that come from a planet and they're in a war for some reason, but for some reason, like Daniel Warren Johnson didn't feel like, hey, I don't need to explain that in this first issue. Or I can briefly, but you get the gist of it. Here, it was just like, it took you 25 minutes to read one freaking page, so it's just like, it sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work.
That's good storytelling to me when you don't exposition dump, though, when you you rely on your audience a little bit more, and you're like, I don't need to explain everything.
Yeah, I agree.
Need to kind of go through the story. And it's interesting because Hickman doesn't explain everything, but he does all at the same time. He like leaves so many pieces out, but then over explains, like an example of like throwing something on the ground. He'll over explain for 20 minutes, but you won't actually know what he threw on the ground.
I took this piece of material. It was very blue and it's shredded, and I was playing with it with my finger, and I looked at it and I took it and I threw it. It blew in the air for about 5 seconds and wound up hitting the ground. And like he'll over explain instead of just going, I picked this up and I threw it on the floor. Like he'll go into such detail about certain things.
He's a very poetic writer. Like his structures feel like a poem to me, and I don't love poetry. So
all right, so there's G.O.D.S, but are you guys gonna pick up issue 2?
No.
No,
I'm good.
I'm gonna try.
I'll pick up Transformers. I won't pick up G.O.D.S.
I'll try issue 2. All right, so let's talk about.
Probably will too.
You will. There you go.
Probably.
Let's talk about our number 5 then. What was your number 5, Kat?
Mine was X-Men, actually, issue 27. I'm having a good time with this book. I do think it's a little slow. I think X-Men in general has been a little slow, but I like Kitty. I think she's fun. I honestly only really love the Kitty side of this story. Like, I think it did slug a little bit as we got to like Miss Marvel and everybody, but I think it's it's a solid book. It's not. I'm surprised it made my top 5. I think just because I didn't have a ton of books, but it's like a middling book for me.
I didn't like this issue as much. It's
not as strong as the previous.
Yeah, a weaker one for me. There was a lot of, hey, let's go to the Fantastic Four and let's talk about Rasputin 4, and I was just like, I don't like this one as much. But it wasn't horrible. There wasn't a lot of books this week, and my number 5 book was the book we just talked about. And I think it was kind of on a little bit of a default because, like you, I didn't have a ton of books. So G.O.D.S was my number 5 this week. What about you, Brad?
as far as X-Men, I agree with everything both of you said. Batman was actually my number 5, kind of also by default. And I'm trying to remember exactly what happened because I think it was the very first book I read.
Yeah, it was just a fight between Batman and Nightwing. Batman's literally going crazy.
Yeah, but then like he infected Red Hood with something. I think that was I think that was the element that I liked, that it's obvious that something's off with Batman and everybody's starting to realize it and that kind of thing. So they're kind of gathering together to figure this out and trying to and even Damian realizes it by the end of the issue. So that aspect of it I kind of like, and it kind of explains why Batman's so, harsh.
It's the Zertin Law guy, his other entity or whatever it is.
Exactly.
I think this book is interesting because it's in this whole arc is interesting because there's elements that I liked, right? Because like you're saying, Brant, the Jason stuff is interesting.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you want to change him because you don't think he's doing things right. Cool. That's a complicated story and one that should be told. But it's told in such a surface level that it's so hard to love this book. It's fine. And it's in my top 5 too, because there weren't a lot of books this week. But I don't love this book. And it's I wish it just had so much potential, and I just wish it actually dug a little deeper than it's so surface level.
I like the Jason Todd stuff too, like just because I like the way it was illustrated, because I think Jorge Jimenez is doing the artwork in this one again.
Yeah,
he is. So he and I love like how Jason is struggling to just get up and just talk to Batman, and the way it was described, like anytime you get heightened adrenaline, you're going to feel fear. So when he's called upon to join, Catwoman's crew again, he's like, I can't do it. You don't understand. He did something wrong with me. And I love that aspect of the story. And then we get the other stuff where it's basically just a fight. And like you said, Kat, very surface level. And then you get the whole like Vandal Savage storyline going on there too. Like, it's kind of like, did I need that whole backstory of like when he was depowered and now he's powered up again? And, I don't know. I didn't care about that aspect of it either. But this book is also in my top 5 as well. But it's same thing. It's just all kind of my default a little bit, so. Curious where this story will go, but this side of the story I feel like is written better than Teenie Howard's side and the Catwoman side for sure. So, all right. So we talked about X-Men. We just talked about Batman. So we're going to go on to our number 4. And then speaking of that, Batman was my number 4. So that wraps that up real quick. So what was yours, Brant?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, X-Men was my number 4. I'm getting confused after that comment. Like, I've read both Immortal and X-Men, and I'm trying to remember now what happened in X-Men. Because I might be getting the two of them confused, like switched. So, what happened in X-Men?
That was
they had to go to the Fantastic Four's place. And Rasputin the Fourth was in it as well with Ms. Marvel.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. All right, so Immortal X-Men is actually my number 4. And I got them switched. Gotcha. For the same reasons that I think it was Serenity mentioned, they found out Cyclops is alive, and Kitty was trying to break him out and Juggernaut out and everything. So it was I thought that was interesting. They had sewed Cyclops' eyes shut to keep him from blasting and stuff, but he was like barely alive, and there was like a trigger around Juggernaut's neck that if he tampered with it, it would kill Cyclops and this whole thing. So Kitty was trying to figure out how to rescue everybody, and that's basically the gist of the issue. So I thought it was solid.
All right. So what about you, Kat?
Mine was Batman. We already talked about it.
Man, oh man, we're just flying. Talk about Rangers Academy issue 1. Did you guys realize, and I was told this, that this book was released on Free Comic Book Day? And
I did.
Issue.
I did. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I don't think I got it, but yeah.
I did not. liked the Free Comic Book Day book, and I didn't like this one. I
I
thought they
did
were
not
gonna,
like this.
and it's so sad because like, I really do think Power Rangers is great, and I think what they've been doing is great, and this is not related to that at all. It doesn't feel like Power Rangers. I was lost. I was bored. I didn't like it.
I honestly wasn't lost. I just felt like, oh my God, am I reading Star Wars: The New Hope? Like, I am literally reading that story because it's like the chick wants to go off and be a freaking Power Ranger. Her dad doesn't want anything for her to do with it. It's a bad thing. Their ship crashed in a swamp. That happens in Empire Strikes Back. Like, I just felt like I was reading Star Wars all over again. And then she's a stowaway, and then they go to the Ranger Academy. But to get to that point, again, we talk about over explanation, and to get to that point, that's something you could have done in 2, 3, 4 pages max and get to the Ranger Academy and introduce that portion of it much quicker than just hanging around a deadbeat planet the whole time and about the dad being this big grump the whole time.
I don't think I hated it as much as you two, but I definitely agree. It took a while to get there, and it was definitely not the same vibe as the Power Rangers book. With the Academy stuff, it almost gives me a little bit of a Star Trek vibe as well. So
And
it's
that's
like
probably why I
somewhere in between
disliked
the
it.
two. Yeah, I I like the idea of there being a Ranger Academy. I think that's a cool idea. It gives me the impression that this is in the future from where we are in
Sure.
Power Rangers and stuff. And it also gave me, clues that her dad was involved with the Power Rangers at some point.
Well,
Maybe he's
yeah,
a former
absolutely.
Ranger.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought there was some interesting elements to it, but I agree that it wasn't like this wasn't the issue to bring in people that aren't, that are new to the Power Rangers to make them fans of Power Rangers. But
I
at the
don't know
same
if it's
time,
even for Power Rangers fans either, because it's
no,
so distant to Power Rangers. There's no Rangering in it.
yeah, that's true.
There's
So I
nothing.
don't
There's
know
not
what the
even like
purpose of it was.
there's not even a flashback of Power Rangers in it or anything like that to make it. All they do is they show like a symbol. Was it like a symbol at the end of it? Like, I don't even know. Like,
Yeah,
and this you got me to pick up a Power Ranger book. Like,
Yeah.
that was the thing, because I'm like, oh, this could
yeah,
be like Strange Academy, something like that. Like, I wanted to see these kids in the academy training, doing whatever it is, very first issue. I don't care about this chick who is living on this planet. Just give me to that place. There was just it was a poor issue 1 in my opinion.
hmm.
I
So
agree with you on that. We had a question, I think, from a Facebook user. Bigger
Yeah.
surprise book, Sacrificers or the Madness? I've only read Sacrificers, so
I would say the
Um,
Sacrificers
yeah,
for
I
me.
would say the Sacrificers as well. I like the Madness, but
I do
the
too.
Sacrificers is just a different kind of vibe and surprise and sleeper hit kind of thing.
So here's the question, Kat, are you picking up Rangers Academy too?
no, I'm good. See, I'm not just giving that to gods. I'm giving it to the Power Rangers too.
Yeah.
I'll stick to my Power Rangers. I'm good.
What about you, Brent? You picking up the next one?
I'm trying to remember if I pre-ordered it or not.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't think I did.
Uh-huh.
Because I usually wait like with stuff like that I'm unsure about. Um, I doubt it if I didn't. So
Gotcha.
I don't think it's for me.
Right.
And who knows if it's not for Brand, I don't know who it's for.
Right. I know. Watch it be issue 2 be the next like best thing ever.
You're right.
I can't
Right.
see that reality, but who knows?
All right, let's talk about Birds of Prey issue 2. Curious to hear what you guys got to say about this one.
I thought it was a second issue slump. I felt like nothing happened in it. The first issue is so much of like setting up the characters, which was a lot of fun because you got to see like why they're on the team. And then there's a lot of standing around in this issue until you kind of get to the point. That doesn't mean issue 3 will be bad, but I do think issue 2 slowed it a little bit too much down.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It was definitely not as good as issue 1 and did slow things down, but I still enjoyed it. I like these characters together. Um, I, you know, I think we talked a lot about over explaining stuff, and I think they did that a little bit in this issue as well with the plot of, you know, not the plot, their plot, like their plan, yes, their mission, and setting up the parameters and everything. It felt like that those cutscenes, like those Ocean 11's thing where they're putting all the pieces in place to go execute the plan, but all that takes place very fast. So this was spread out a little bit more. But you know, I still like the oddball zany effect of having Harley and Zealot together, and you know, and just these odd pairings that you had all throughout this issue. I thought was still fun, but yeah, definitely a slower issue.
I agree 100%. I thought maybe it was just me, but I thought this issue was really, really, really slow. And I'm like, do we need the entire issue to explain what we're going to do, what the plan is going to be in place? I thought there were some creative moments in there with like characters falling off the page and stuff like that. Like I thought that was kind of neat as well. But overall, I was just really bored by this story. It's because we got a lot of setup in the first issue of the team, right? And so I was okay with that, and I like how it was done. And here we just get a lot of setup of the plan in place, and I'm like, man, I hope the whole book is not going to be this way, because that's not going to make for a very, you know, fun book. I don't want every book to be this over explanation of everything that is going on. So I'll see what happens with issue 3 here.
I mean, I'll still continue to pick it up for a while.
Yeah, I will too.
We'll see.
But
yeah, I know, because these are your guys, you know.
Yeah,
these are your people. So,
but it's also Kelly Thompson. I feel like there's times when she'll write 1 or 2 issues that are slow, and then she'll blow your mind in the next one.
I agree. I think she's, you know, she can have really good issues, some issues not so great, but she does have series that are not so great either. So, and this is her first DC series too. So this is, you know, probably a little bit of a learning curve also, I would think.
Yeah. You don't know, because there was that whole arc of Captain Marvel that we were all like, where she was like in a different reality or whatever. It was like, oh,
yeah.
We all dropped it after that.
So we'll see. All right, so we're gonna go on to our number 3. What was your number 3, Brant?
Mine actually was Birds of Prey. So,
all right, cool. Kat?
Mine was Transformers.
Nice. What was mine? Oh, it's always like every time it comes out, Ghost Rider. So this was an annual. So this in the annual was basically a Halloween story. And you had Elsa Bloodstone in the book. You had Ghost Rider, and you had Talia War Road, who team up together. And Red Hood is in this book, and we haven't seen him in quite a while, which was interesting. And he wound up getting like the Book of Halloween. And what happens is he unleashed this spell, and Halloween was erupting out into the world, and you had to stop it before it hatched and took over the entire like Earth or whatever. It was just a lot of fun. Great team up between all the characters. Again, it's an annual. You don't have to buy it, but it was a book that I enjoyed because it was fun. So that's about it there. All right. So next we're going to talk about, I think we're on Shazam now.
It's interesting because Daniel has been in the comments on us. They really love Shazam, and
that's good. I did not pick this issue up. I just could not get into it anymore.
I don't think you missed anything. Yeah, this was like a romance issue, but not a romance. I don't know. I want to continue it because I like the characters, but I feel like Mark Waid has kind of lost his touch on every book he's been on so far, because I think they've given him too much. Honestly, I think there's just too much on his plate.
This issue was, I think it confirmed some fears that we had, was that like every issue is just going to be a different god taking their turn at controlling Shazam and see what happens. And that was the case here. It was another one and doing the same thing. And I was a little bit bored by this issue, unfortunately.
Same.
So
that's sad. I just thought it had that momentum going into the Night Terror, and after Night Terror, it's kind of like you forget what was going on, and then I just lost interest, which was sad because I really, really loved the first issue of that book. I thought it ended off with such a cool cliffhanger, and but if you're enjoying it, that's great. Hopefully you buy every single issue and it gets better for you. So it's just, different tastes,
Facebook
All right,
user asked,
go ahead.
I was just going to say real quick, this Facebook user, whoever this is, asked what we think of Rumpus Room. Did either of you read it? I read the first issue.
No, I haven't.
I think it was a few weeks back. I forget who publishes it, but I thought it was decent. I thought it was interesting. It was interesting enough to bring me back for a second issue. It was like this person was looking for their missing sister, I think it was, and they went to this rich billionaire's place who they had worked for and was trying to find out where they were, and it ended up this billionaire was like he had some people dressed in like plushy outfits, and they were like locking people up. Anybody that kind of got onto this guy, he was locking them up in these cages and underneath this house or something weird, and that was like how you left it. It was left on this cliffhanger, but it was really odd, and it was quirky enough to be like, I gotta know why he's trapping all these people, and why are they dressed in these outfits and stuff. So yeah, I don't know where it's going though.
Sounds interesting.
I think it might have been
I haven't even heard of it. Okay,
no, it makes sense. It could be AWA. Yeah,
sounds up there, Ali. We also have Steve who says, "Did anyone read Fantastic Four? They did Avengers as dinosaurs, ripping off the JLA series. I'm dropping the book." Yeah, I dropped it a while ago.
We all dropped it. Unfortunately, just the same thing. It just missed the mark for me. Nothing ever happened in the book.
No, and there's no big character moments either in that book. But yeah, you just can't pick up everything. Honestly, comics.
That was another Daniel Warren Johnson project.
I was just
Jurassic
thinking that.
League.
Yeah.
So, all right.
We're on number 2. We're on number
2. Yeah. What was yours, Kat?
Mine was Ghost Lore, actually, issue 5. I thought this picked up a bit. We get to see the main girl. She hangs out with other people who are seeing these ghosts, so you get to see her interact with them and kind of figure out how they deal with it. And I like that it was separate from the father. I don't think they do anything too interesting with that relationship, but it's more about the characters than the ghost lores, because even though this is called Ghost Lore, I like the main characters more. And yeah, it was a solid issue. So I know I think I'm the only one reading this book, but I'm sticking around with it.
Yeah, I read issue 1. I don't remember if I even picked up issue 2.
It's been a bit of a slog, but it's interesting enough to be like, all right, I want to see where it goes.
Cool. All right. So, Brant, what's your number 2?
The Sacrificers, number 3.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm enjoying this book. Yeah, this one just like we talked about it came out of nowhere. It's like, okay, this is now they're in this paradise, and obviously we find out what happens in paradise. And we knew it was coming, but at the same time it was still heart-wrenching, right?
Because you want to know like how it was going to happen,
right?
And then when you find out what it's for, that is sad. Like, it's the most pathetic reason ever. Right?
This issue is a little slower for me just because of the beginning, because it's a big exposition. Obviously you get the payoff by the end, but I thought that slugged a little bit for me, which is why I wasn't in my top 5. Like, obviously still like this book and I want to see where it goes, and it's creepy, but it did take a little while to get there.
I mean, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, it did make sense. I didn't love, like, was it the daughter of the host of the party, like, introducing you to everyone, explaining all these people. That part I agree was a little bit slow, and that could have been shortened a little bit. But
yeah. And I get why they did it, because it's the gods, and you have to like know who they are and how powerful they are, and what the sacrificers, how meaningful, like how meaningless actually that they actually are, and what they're used for. My gosh, man, I just can't. But did you realize the character that is left at the end? Remember the very first character in the beginning of the comic,
the blue character.
Bird,
okay. Oh yeah, he's still
he's still
doing his
alive.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
which I figured because I
curious.
always thought he was the main character of this book.
Right.
So I am totally curious what happened, man. Like what's going to happen with him and just everything around this. Because even though you saw what happened at the end of this book, do you have any idea where it's going? Like
No. Or how many issues
right?
this could last.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So I like how it's just unpredictable that way.
Yeah, I agree.
So, all right, let's see. And then I think we just go to our number one. Is that where we're at? Yeah.
What was your number 2?
Sacrificers.
Oh, so you both had Sacrificers.
Yeah, we both had it. Yeah.
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 And yours was Ghost Lore, right?
Yeah, mine was Ghost Lore.
Yeah, okay.
And then what's your number one, Kat?
Mine is Peacemaker. This was really, really good. This ended well. This is the last issue of the series. So if you go get a graphic novel, pick it up because it beginning, middle, end. It's a good book. It's about, Peacemaker not having any friends, and by the end, he does have at least one friend who helps him out. And it's a heartwarming book, but then also there's a lot of good comedy. There's good action in the book, and again, I feel like it does stick the landing. It sticks to theme. It's just a good book. If you like the Peacemaker television show, I think you'll like this one. And I don't feel like enough people were buying it, so go check it out.
Cool. I have, like I said, I fell off of it during the summertime, not because it was bad. I just did. I never caught up to it.
It's not a book that's connected to anything else, so it's a little
you
easier
can read it
of a
at
book.
any time. Yeah.
No.
All right, cool. So that's the top
Transformers 5 for you guys, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
yeah, we didn't say, but
yeah, it's Transformers. Because it's obvious there, but yeah, Transformers was really good. Looking forward to the next issue, and I'm excited for G.I. Joe too, man. I really am. Did you happen to see the preview for Transformers G.I. Joe? On my Facebook group, someone posted it on there. It's like a live, like they show the first, I don't know if it's the first few pages, but dude, it looks good. It looks really good.
I'm about to check that out after later.
It's in my Facebook group. Like someone posted like a preview of it. And I was like, wow, it looks a little gritty, they're not so like cartoony, I like that.
Nice.
And Serpentor's in it too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you saw Destro, the Baroness is in there.
Yeah.
There were some cool characters in there. So
I'll have to check it out.
All right. So I guess, Brant, now we're going to go on to the most anticipated.
Oh, yeah. I totally forgot. I was like, oh, show's over. Man, you see where my head's at tonight. Yeah, so most anticipated, and not a lot of books. We've got like a lot of the same books throughout our list. So I'm just gonna pick one to talk about. I'll save that one. I'll save both of those. Let's talk about Green Lantern. Both of you had it on your list. It was almost on my list. It just missed it. So
it's just a book that moves really well. So I'm like, you ended with Sinestro. I still don't know how I feel about Carol. We'll see what they end up doing with her. But no, I think the art's good for this book. I genuinely every month excited for it, which I can't say for a lot of superhero books all the time. So like I'm like looking forward to going to the comic book store to read this book.
Yeah, I don't have too much more to say either. It's just I am excited to see where the story is going to go, especially now that Sinestro is on Earth and he's talking with Hal Jordan and this whole Carol Ferris thing. I think it can only go up from here. I'm hoping.
Yeah, we also have a brand new character debut in this issue, so check that out. All right, and then one that made mine and Kat's list, which is the one that bumped Green Lantern off for me, I think, or maybe something like that. I don't know. Anyway, it's a new Image title called Midlife or How to Hero at 50, #1. This concept just sounds interesting to me, and I got to see if
I think I'm getting. I hope it's
good.
Yeah, I am getting it. It fits me because I'm almost there, dude. I'm 48 years old. I'm getting to 50.
Yeah,
I could be this guy.
And from what I remember in this list, it's about a firefighter who's like never seen a fire, but then he gets fire powers. And he's like scared of fire. So I think there's a lot of irony. There's a lot of interesting stuff in it. And it's funny because I feel like we didn't get to talk about that many indies this week besides like Ghost Lore, but there's actually a good chunk of indies coming out tomorrow, but it was hard to put in most anticipated. But this is one where I'm like, oh yeah, Concept totally sells me. But then there's like a book, The Haunted Girl, that comes out tomorrow. I'm like, oh, that looks really cool. But I'm like, I don't know. It's like it's just an issue 1. Who the hell knows?
Right.
But there is a lot of cool indies coming out tomorrow, so I'm excited for that. But this just like stood apart from the rest. Where I'm like, this sounds fun. This sounds different.
Yeah.
The Haunted Girl, you've seen Haunted Girls everywhere, but this is like I haven't seen this everywhere.
The same thing with me. There's another book from Image called Nights, I think, is coming out. It sounded interesting as well. But this one just, I could see them like, should I call it Midlife or should I call it How to Hero at 50? Just call it both. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
And it's a superhero book too, which you don't always get with indies. So that's fun.
Exactly. Superior Spider-Man returns. It's finally here. I'm excited for this. I'm curious to see how he comes back and everything.
I was so close to put this on my top 3, but I also have my reservations because I'm like, oh man, Dan Slott hasn't hit it out of the ballpark with the return of Spider-Man for me. Like the Spider-Boy stuff was a little disappointing. So I'm like, is this just gonna be the same thing with Superior Spider-Man? Why I like Superior is because it was so different. But I'm obviously looking forward to it. I just think these other 3 I'm a little bit more excited for.
Sure.
I'm excited. I like the way he writes. I think he writes the best Doc Ock, in my opinion. I think he gives him the most.
Is there a contest?
Most personality. What's that?
Is there a contest for that though? Because I don't think anyone.
But the thing is if you're going to have a villain, right, and it's going to be Doc Ock, instead of having nerdy, boring Doc Ock, you want to have like this old-fashioned guy who like is overly sarcastic and talks like the die is cast, and you just laugh at the way he talks. Like I find that comical, and I'm curious. I am really curious. Like, why is he coming Superior Spider-Man again? Like, what is his motive behind?
That's what I want to know.
Yeah. So that's why it was on my list.
Yeah. And then the only one that made all of our lists is obviously Amazing Spider-Man number 35.
This is supposed to be like a big issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's supposed to set up gang war and all that stuff. It's, this list has said don't miss this issue, et cetera, et cetera. It's also the end of this Sins of Osborn little arc.
Which has been the best arc from Spider-Man in God knows how long. Years. I want to say since like the Queen Goblin stuff, because I remember we all liked Queen Goblin a lot. I want to say since then, which I don't know how long ago it was.
Yeah, that's been a while. I mean, that's a long time. So I'm curious how
oddly enough, still with Queen Goblin.
Yeah. That character, which is honestly, she's such an interesting character that I don't think they do enough with her, because I think she's so new and so interesting. But yeah, I mean, how do you not put this as your number 1? I hope it sticks the landing. And the one thing that worries me is that they said it's going to last until like issue 50. So it's going to be like a 15 issue arc, whatever they're setting up.
Yeah.
So from what I read a while back, I think that Zeb Wells' goal was to write 50 issues of the series.
Okay.
So this could mark his last hurrah on the series. So
we'll could see. But the solicits actually said this sets up the next 24 issues. So
so sorry. So now I was completely wrong. That's even worse. That's even worse than like whatever 15 issues is. That's 10 more issues. That's crazy.
Yeah. Right. So I don't know. Well, maybe I don't know. Maybe after whatever's going on here, maybe that's when he'll be done. So, because I have a feeling he doesn't have too much left to write with the guy.
What is the legacy number for this one?
I don't even know, honestly. I'm not sure.
We're on like probably 9, 10, 9, 12, 13.
So it's not even getting to like a big legacy unless you count 950. But Tevia says, do you believe Norman will become Green Goblin? Yes. I mean, honestly, that probably will happen, but I hope that's not the big thing, because that's so boring. We know that's going to happen already. Which honestly I think is a shame, because I've been enjoying this version of Norman a lot. I think he's more interesting than what you could do with Green Goblin at this moment.
I agree. He's much more of I feel like a factor in Amazing Spider-Man comics because he's good and he's trying to redeem himself and he's trying to be Peter's friend. And I like that element. And it's something that we really haven't seen before, when it's come. So it is something different,
Or Spider-Man kills someone, right? I mean, obviously, we hope that doesn't happen. That changes the mythos of Spider-Man a lot, but he could do something with Green Goblin. Maybe he kills him or kills Paul. Who knows? I hope it's something like that. But I feel like if it was really, really big, wouldn't it have gotten leaked already? That's kind of how comics work.
Yeah,
And
I
I haven't
agree.
heard anything yet. So
I
unless
was
it's so big that they're keeping their mouth shut. But
yeah, I was curious going back to the legacy numbering. It's 929. So I was curious if you added 24 issues to that, if that would be a milestone, but it's like 953. So no, who knows?
Yeah, a couple epilogues later, he needs to get to 953 to end. Yeah, I don't know. But we're excited for it. Again, we always say most anticipated doesn't mean we're gonna think it's the best book. It just means we're looking forward to seeing where it goes.
For it. Yeah.
I remember I put Miss Marvel, the New Mutant, in my most anticipated video, and I think here too. And I got almost crucified. Like, how are you excited for that book? They're doing so many bad things with Miss Marvel, and I'm like, I'm not saying it's going to be a great book. It just means I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with it. And I don't even think it's a bad book. I think it's a fine book. I don't think it's a great book, but it's fine.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's there.
It's better than what we've been getting, I think, right?
Sure, yeah. It's definitely better. But they're, again, no competition.
All right. So I guess that's all the anticipated. We talked about the top 5. We talked about the Transformers. So that's it. That's all we got for you tonight. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. And we want to thank you guys for watching. And if you're watching this post live, thank you just as much. And of course, guys, make sure you subscribe to Comic Book Weekly YouTube channel where you can watch all the episodes on there. Also subscribe to Comic Book Corner 2.0. Don't forget to like the video, share it, hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications from us. Follow us on all that great social media like Facebook and formerly known as Twitter, which is now called X, and Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. I say it all the time. Tumblr, MySpace.
Wherever you want to follow us.
Yeah, all kinds of great stuff. So thank you, guys. It's been great. We'll see you next week. Happy New Comic.